The call came at 3:47 in the morning, not through a phone, but through the particular silence that fills a building when something has gone terribly wrong. Marcus Webb had cleaned the Meridian Tower for 19 months, pushing his cart through marble hallways that cost more per square foot than his entire apartment. And in that time, he had learned to read the building's moods the way a sailor reads the sea. Tonight, the 47th floor felt different. The air carried a chemical sharpness beneath the usual scent of designer candles and imported flowers, a smell that triggered memories he had spent 2 years trying to bury. The door to penthouse 4702 stood slightly ajar. In 19 months of cleaning Olivia Sterling's residence, Marcus had never seen that door anything but locked, sealed, protected by the kind of security system that cost more than his annual salary. The woman who lived behind that door appeared on magazine covers and cable news programs, her face synonymous with the particular brand of success that Los Angeles manufactured and exported to the world. She did not leave her door open at 4 in the morning. Marcus pushed through the entrance, his body moving before his mind could catalog the reasons this was a terrible idea. 15 years as an EMT and firefighter had hardwired certain responses into his nervous system, and the smell that hit him now activated every one of them. He knew stimulant overdose the way a sommelier knows wine could identify the particular chemical signature of a body pushed past its breaking point. The penthouse's Italian marble floors gleamed under recessed lighting, and on that pristine surface, Olivia Sterling lay crumpled like a discarded receipt. Blood traced a thin line from her nose across her cheek, pooling against the white stone. Her fingers twitched in irregular patterns, grasping at nothing. Her chest rose and fell in the shallow, rapid rhythm of a system in crisis. Marcus dropped to his knees beside her 2 fingers, finding the pulse point on her neck with practiced precision. 180 beats per minute. Dangerous. Potentially fatal if it continued. Her eyes snapped open, pupils dilated so wide they nearly swallowed the gray-blue of her irises. For 3 seconds, she stared at him with the raw terror of an animal caught in headlights, every defense stripped away by whatever chemicals were coursing through her bloodstream. Then something shifted. Marcus watched the transformation happen in real time, watched the walls rebuild themselves brick by invisible brick, until the woman looking back at him bore no resemblance to the one who had been dying on the floor moments before. Her voice came out hoarse, cracked, but carrying the unmistakable edge of authority. "Who the hell are you? How did you get in here?" "I'm the night cleaner. Your door was open." Marcus kept his tone level, the same voice he had used countless times in ambulances when patients needed calm more than comfort. "You're experiencing cardiac distress. Your heart rate is dangerously elevated. I need you to stay still." "I'm fine." She pushed herself to a sitting position, one hand braced against the floor to stop the visible trembling in her arm. "It's just a nosebleed. The air is dry. I get them all the time." Marcus had heard variations of this lie from dozens of people over the years, had watched them construct elaborate explanations for symptoms that needed no explanation if you knew what to look for. He did not argue with her. Instead, he observed. 3 empty mint tins visible in the trash can near the kitchen. Pupils that refused to contract despite the bright lighting. Weight loss evident even through her expensive clothing, the kind that came from forgetting to eat for days at a time. Hands that shook with a fine tremor she could not fully control. "I worked as a firefighter and EMT for 15 years before I started cleaning buildings." The words came out flat, factual, stripped of any judgment. I've pulled bodies from car wrecks at 3 in the morning. I know what stimulant abuse looks like. I know what it smells like. And I know what happens to hearts that beat at 180 for too long. The color drained from her face. For a moment, the mask slipped again, and Marcus saw the exhaustion beneath the kind that settled into bones and refused to leave. Then she laughed a sharp sound with no humor in it. What do you want? Money, a promotion. Are you recording this for some tabloid? I want you to not die on my shift. It would mean a lot of paperwork. The absurdity of the response seemed to catch her off guard. She stared at him, this woman who commanded boardrooms and intimidated venture capitalists, looking at a janitor in a navy polo shirt like he was a puzzle she could not solve. You're serious? You actually don't want anything. I want to go home and see my son in the morning. I want to finish my shift without calling an ambulance. Beyond that, your life is your business. Marcus stood retrieving his cleaning cart from the hallway. But if you collapse again while I'm mopping your kitchen, I'm calling 911. Fair warning. He began working, moving through the penthouse with the methodical efficiency of someone who had learned that the best way to help certain people was to give them space to decide if they wanted help at all. Behind him, he could hear Olivia Sterling breathing, could track the gradual slowing of her respiration as whatever crisis had gripped her body began to ease. She did not speak again for nearly an hour, and when she finally did, her voice sounded different, smaller, more human. Why didn't you call already? You could have. You probably should have. Marcus paused, dust cloth in hand, and turned to face her. She had moved to the couch, wrapped in a blanket that probably cost more than his monthly rent, looking less like a titan of industry and more like someone's daughter who had gotten in over her head. My wife died 2 years ago. Cancer. She hid the symptoms for 8 months because she didn't want me to worry. By the time I figured it out, there was nothing anyone could do. He returned to his cleaning. I spent a lot of nights afterward asking myself if I could have seen it sooner, if I should have pushed harder when she said she was fine, if believing her lies made me complicit in her death. What does that have to do with me? Nothing. Everything. He straightened a picture frame that did not need straightening. I've decided I don't want to be the kind of person who looks away anymore. But I also learned you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. So I'm not calling 911. I'm not threatening to expose you. I'm just telling you what I see, and you can do whatever you want with that information. Silence stretched between them, filled only by the distant hum of the building's climate control system. Marcus finished the living room, moved to the kitchen, began the familiar routine of surfaces and appliances that gleamed even when dirty. When he finally gathered his supplies to leave, Olivia Sterling was still sitting on the couch, staring at nothing, the blanket pulled tight around her shoulders. "What's your name?" The question came as he reached the door. "Marcus Webb." "Marcus Webb." She repeated it like she was filing it away for future reference. "You're the first person in 5 years who's looked at me and seen something other than a stock price." He did not know how to respond to that, so he simply nodded and left, pulling the door closed behind him. The lock engaged, automatically sealing Olivia Sterling back into her fortress of Italian marble and expensive solitude. Marcus finished his shift in a daze, moving through the remaining apartments on autopilot, while his mind kept returning to the woman on the floor, to the smell of chemicals, and fear to the way her eyes had looked when the mask slipped. The sun was rising over Los Angeles when he finally clocked out, painting the smog in shades of orange and pink that made the city look almost beautiful. His Honda Civic sat alone in the employee lot, its 12-year-old paint job dulled by time and salt air, and Marcus sat behind the wheel for a long moment before starting the engine. He thought about Rachel, about the nights he had spent in hospital rooms watching her fight a battle she had already lost. He thought about the promises he had made to her in those final weeks. Promises to stay open to life, to keep his heart from calcifying into something cold and self-protective. He thought about Olivia Sterling and the particular loneliness of having everything except someone who would tell you the truth. The drive to Echo Park took 40 minutes in early morning traffic, winding through streets that transformed from glass towers to bungalows, to the slightly shabby apartment complex Marcus had called home since selling the house to pay Rachel's medical bills. He found Lucas asleep on the couch, textbooks scattered around him like evidence of a battle fought against homework and exhaustion. 9 years old, and already carrying weight that should have belonged to someone twice his age. Marcus covered his son with a blanket and stood watching him sleep, feeling the particular ache that came from loving someone so completely while knowing you could never fully protect them. Lucas had Rachel's eyes, that warm brown that seemed to carry light even in darkness, and when he slept, his face relaxed into an expression of peace that he rarely wore during waking hours. He had learned too young that parents could disappear, that life could shatter without warning, that nothing was guaranteed. The apartment was small, 400 square feet, divided into spaces that served multiple purposes depending on the time of day. Marcus slept on the couch, so Lucas could have the bedroom, a sacrifice he never mentioned, and Lucas never acknowledged, but both understood. The kitchen barely fit one person. The bathroom had a persistent leak that the landlord refused to fix. But there were photos of Rachel on every surface, and Lucas's artwork covered the refrigerator, and somehow, impossibly, it felt like home. Marcus was making coffee when his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. He stared at it for a long moment, reading and rereading the words that appeared on his screen. "This is Olivia Sterling. I don't know why I'm texting you. I just wanted to say thank you for not calling 911 and for not lying to me about what you saw." He typed back, slowly choosing each word with care. "I had a wife who thought protecting me meant hiding the truth. It didn't protect anyone. It just meant we ran out of time to deal with reality." Her response came quickly. "Do you really believe that hiding things just makes them worse? I believe that secrets have a way of killing people. Sometimes fast, sometimes slow, but they always collect their debt eventually." No reply came after that. Marcus poured his coffee and sat at the small kitchen table, watching the morning light creep across the floor while his son slept and the city woke up around them. He should have been tired, should have been desperate for the few hours of sleep he might steal before Lucas needed to be at school, but his mind would not quiet. Something had shifted in the universe, some invisible line had been crossed, and Marcus had the unsettling feeling that his life was about to change in ways he could not predict or control. 3 days passed before he saw her again. 3 days of routine and normalcy, of dropping Lucas at school and sleeping through morning hours and waking to make dinner and help with homework before starting another night shift. 3 days of checking his phone more often than he wanted to admit, looking for messages that did not come. Then, on the 4th night, he arrived at the Meridian Tower to find a note waiting for him at the security desk. "Marcus Webb, please come to penthouse 4702 when you begin your shift. OS." The security guard handed him the envelope with raised eyebrows but no questions, and Marcus tucked it into his pocket with a feeling of inevitability. He had known somehow that this was not over, had known from the moment he saw her lying on that marble floor that their lives had become entangled in ways that would not easily unravel. Olivia answered the door wearing jeans and a Stanford sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face bare of the makeup he had seen in magazine photos. She looked younger, without the armor, more vulnerable, more real, also more exhausted with shadows under her eyes that suggested the past 3 days had not been kind. "I wasn't sure you would come." Her voice carried none of the authority he had heard before, only a tentative hope that did not fit her public image. "Your note said please. Rich people don't usually say please to the cleaning staff." Something that might have been a smile flickered across her face. "I've been thinking about what you said, about secrets collecting their debts." She stepped back, gesturing for him to enter. "I think I'm ready to tell someone the truth. And I don't have anyone else to tell." Marcus left his cleaning cart in the hallway and followed her inside. The penthouse looked different in better lighting, less like a movie set and more like a place where someone actually lived, or tried to live anyway. He noticed details he had missed before: the stack of takeout containers in the trash, none of them opened. The medication bottles lined up on the kitchen counter labels turned inward to hide their contents. The slight tremor in her hands as she poured 2 glasses of water. They sat on opposite ends of the couch, the space between them filled with the particular tension of 2 people about to share something that could not be unshared. Olivia held her water glass like a lifeline, staring into it as she began to speak. "My parents died when I was 23. Car accident. A drunk driver ran a red light and hit them on their way to pick me up from the library." Her voice was flat, reciting facts rather than reliving memories. "I was supposed to be in the car with them. I was supposed to leave when they arrived, but I asked them to wait 20 minutes so I could finish a paper." Marcus understood immediately. 20 minutes, the kind of arbitrary number that could haunt a person forever, the difference between life and death reduced to a scheduling decision. They waited. The drunk driver didn't. Olivia took a sip of water, her hands steadier now that she was speaking. "I've spent 15 years trying to make those 20 minutes mean something. Building a company, making money, proving to myself and the universe that their deaths weren't pointless, that my survival wasn't just random luck. That's a heavy weight to carry. It's the only weight I know how to carry." She looked up at him, her gray eyes direct and searching. "I started using 5 years ago. An investor gave me something at a party in Malibu, told me everyone in tech used it to keep up with the kids who could code for 2 days straight. I told myself it was just a tool, just a way to work harder, to build more, to make their sacrifice worth something. And now I can't function without it. Can't think, can't sleep, can't go to a meeting without my hands shaking unless I've used in the last few hours." The clinical detachment cracked, revealing something raw beneath. "I almost died the other night. On my own bathroom floor, alone, surrounded by more money than most people see in a lifetime. And the last thing I thought before I blacked out was that no one would find me for days." Marcus listened without interrupting, without offering comfort or judgment. He had learned in his years as an EMT that sometimes people just needed to speak their truth out loud to have it witnessed and acknowledged before they could figure out what to do with it. "I run a company worth $3 billion. I have 2,000 employees depending on my decisions. I've been on the cover of Forbes and Fortune, and every tech magazine that exists. Olivia set down her water glass, her hands now visibly shaking. And I haven't had a real conversation with another human being in 5 years. Everyone wants something from me. Everyone sees a stock price, a funding opportunity, a story to tell at cocktail parties. No one sees this. What is this? The question seemed to catch her off guard. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the city lights visible through her floor-to-ceiling windows. A woman who has spent 15 years running from the night her parents died, who built an empire out of guilt and terror, who is slowly killing herself because stopping would mean admitting that none of it actually helped. Her voice broke on the last word. I don't even know who I am without the company, without the success, without the constant motion. I'm afraid if I stop, there won't be anyone there. Marcus thought about Rachel, about the conversations they'd had in her final weeks when pretense had become impossible and only truth remained. She had told him things then that she had never said before, fears and regrets and hopes that had seemed too fragile for everyday life. Dying had freed her to be completely honest, and that honesty had been both devastating and beautiful. I watched my wife die over 8 months. His voice came out quieter than he intended. Slowly, painfully, both of us, knowing how it would end, but unable to do anything except wait. She told me near the end that her biggest regret wasn't the cancer. It was all the time she spent before she got sick, being someone she thought she was supposed to be, instead of someone she actually wanted to be. What did she want to be? Happy, present, free from the constant pressure to achieve and succeed and prove her worth. Marcus met Olivia's eyes. She said that dying taught her what living should have taught her years earlier, that none of the achievements matter if you're miserable while achieving them. That success isn't worth anything if it costs you your actual life. Olivia absorbed this in silence. Outside, the city continued its relentless motion, millions of people living their own dramas, while two strangers sat in a penthouse trying to make sense of existence. Finally, she spoke again. What do you think I should do? I think that's not my question to answer. Marcus stood, moving to the window to give her space. I can tell you what I see. I see someone who is slowly killing herself to honor people who would have wanted her to live. I see someone with enough resources to get the best help in the world who is too afraid or too proud or too something to ask for it. I see someone who is very alone, surrounded by people who don't actually see her. And what do you see when you look past all that? He turned back to face her. I see someone worth saving. Someone who called a cleaning man at 4 a.m. because she needed a human connection so badly, she was willing to reach out to a complete stranger. Someone who is still fighting, even if she doesn't realize that's what she's doing. I don't feel like I'm fighting. I feel like I'm drowning. Sometimes that's the same thing. The conversation continued for another hour, meandering through topics both profound and mundane. Olivia told him about building her company, about the 18-hour days and the missed meals and the gradual erosion of everything in her life that wasn't work. Marcus told her about Rachel, about Lucas, about the particular challenges of raising a child alone while working nights and trying to hold together a life that felt permanently fractured. When he finally left to begin his actual shift, something had changed between them. Not quite friendship, not yet, but the beginning of something that might grow in that direction. A recognition, perhaps, that loneliness took many forms, and that sometimes the most unlikely people could provide the connection others could not. 2 days later, Olivia texted him again. I haven't used since we talked. 2 days. I don't know how long I can keep it up, but I wanted someone to know. Marcus stared at the message for a long time before responding. That's real progress. I'm proud of you. No one has said that to me in years. Then the people in your life aren't paying attention. Their text conversations became a regular occurrence over the following week, brief exchanges that somehow managed to carry weight despite their simplicity. Olivia would report her hours clean like a soldier reporting from the front lines. Marcus would offer encouragement that stopped short of false optimism. Neither of them acknowledged how unusual the situation was, a billionaire and a janitor connected by nothing except proximity and the particular intimacy of crisis. Then came the morning when everything escalated. Marcus had just finished his shift, had just walked through his apartment door to find Lucas making his own breakfast with the careful independence of a child who has learned not to rely on adults being available. His phone rang with an unknown number, and when he answered, Olivia's voice came through ragged and desperate. Marcus, I can't do this. I thought I could, but I can't. Everything hurts, and I can't stop shaking, and I keep thinking, if I just use once just to get through today, it won't matter. But I know it will matter. I know it's a lie, but I can't stop thinking it. Where are you? He was already grabbing his keys, adrenaline flooding his system the way it used to when dispatch calls came through the station radio. My bathroom. The floor. I've been here for hours. My heart is racing so fast I think it might explode, and I can't breathe right. And Marcus. I'm scared. I'm so scared. Listen to me. He pitched his voice low and calm, the same tone he had used with countless trauma victims. You're experiencing withdrawal. Your body is punishing you for denying it what it thinks it needs. It feels terrible, but it's not dangerous. You're going to be okay. I don't feel okay. I feel like I'm dying. You felt like you were dying the other night, and you didn't die. You're stronger than you think. He covered the phone's microphone and turned to Lucas. Hey, buddy, I need you to come with me somewhere. Important. Lucas looked up from his cereal concern flickering across his young face. The lady who needs help? Yeah, she's having a hard time. His son nodded solemnly, already moving to put on shoes without being asked. In that moment, Marcus felt a fierce pride in the boy Rachel had helped him raise this child, who understood instinctively that helping others was simply what you did. The drive to the Meridian Tower took forever and no time at all. Los Angeles traffic parting in that strange way it sometimes did when the universe recognized urgency. Marcus talked to Olivia the entire way, keeping her anchored to his voice, walking her through breathing exercises that he could hear her attempting on the other end of the line. Lucas sat quietly in the passenger seat, watching his father with an expression that suggested he was filing this away for future reference, learning how to be the kind of man who showed up when people needed him. They arrived to find Olivia exactly where she had said she would be, curled on her bathroom floor in a position that reminded Marcus painfully of another bathroom. Another time, Rachel's body folded against the tile after a particularly brutal chemo session. He helped Olivia up, guided her to the couch, wrapped her in the same blanket she had worn the first night they met. Lucas approached with the cautious curiosity of a child encountering an injured animal. He had brought a glass of water from the kitchen without being asked, and he offered it to Olivia with a gravity that seemed beyond his years. His voice was soft when he spoke. My mom used to shake like that sometimes when she was really sick. She said the best thing was just having someone there, even if they couldn't fix it. Olivia looked at the 9-year-old standing before her, this small person who had already learned too much about loss and fear, and something in her expression shifted. She took the water glass with trembling hands, tears streaming down her face, unable to speak, but nodding in acknowledgement of the gift he had given her. The hours that followed were brutal. Olivia cycled through waves of physical distress, her body rejecting the absence of chemicals it had come to depend on. Marcus stayed beside her, drawing on every technique he had learned in 15 years of emergency response. He monitored her pulse, forced her to drink water, talked her through the worst moments with a steady stream of calm reassurance. Lucas drifted in and out of the room, bringing supplies when asked and retreating to give them privacy when the conversations became too adult. Near midnight, when the worst seemed to have passed and Olivia had finally stopped shaking long enough to eat half a piece of toast, she asked the question Marcus had been expecting. "Why are you here, really? You have a son who needs you a job. You could lose a life that has nothing to do with mine. Why do you keep showing up?" Marcus was quiet for a long time, choosing his words with care. "Rachel made me promise something before she died. She said not to close off my heart, not to let her death turn me into someone cold and distant. She said the most important thing a person could do was stay open to others even when it hurt. And helping me is keeping that promise. Partly." He looked at his son asleep now on the enormous sectional couch that probably cost more than everything Marcus owned. "But it's also because I failed her. I let her hide from me, let her protect me from the truth until there was nothing left to protect. I've spent 2 years wondering if I could have saved her by pushing harder, asking more questions, refusing to accept the easy lies. You think you can save me instead? I think you can save yourself. I'm just here to remind you that you're worth saving." Olivia stared at him with an expression he could not read. "You really believe that, after everything I've told you about who I am, what I've done, how badly I've screwed up my own life?" Marcus leaned forward, making sure she could see his face clearly. "My wife used to say that the strongest people aren't the ones who never fall down. They're the ones who keep getting back up every morning, even when they're not sure why they should. You're still here, Olivia. You're still fighting. That makes you worth every ounce of effort anyone wants to invest in you." She did not respond with words. Instead, she reached out and took his hand, gripping it with the desperate strength of someone clinging to a lifeline. They sat that way for a long time, connected by nothing except the simple human gesture that meant more than all the money in her bank accounts. Dawn came slowly to Los Angeles, painting the sky in watercolors that made the city look almost peaceful. Marcus watched the light change through Olivia's enormous windows, feeling the particular exhaustion that came from a night spent caring for someone in crisis. Lucas stirred on the couch, rubbed his eyes, looked around with the momentary confusion of someone waking up in an unfamiliar place. His gaze found Olivia, then moved to his father, then back to Olivia. Whatever he saw seemed to satisfy some internal calculation because he nodded to himself and spoke in a voice still rough with sleep. "My mom said that love isn't about fixing people. It's about staying with them while they fix themselves." He yawned hugely. "I think that's what we're doing, right, Dad? Staying." Marcus felt his throat tighten. Rachel's wisdom filtered through their son, emerging at exactly the moment it was needed. He pulled Lucas into a one-armed hug, breathing in the familiar scent of his shampoo. "Yeah, buddy. That's exactly what we're doing." Olivia watched their exchange with something like hunger in her eyes, the look of someone observing a foreign custom they desperately wish they understood. She had built a fortune, commanded armies of employees, shaped the future of technology, but she had never learned how to accept the simple gift of being cared for. Marcus released Lucas and turned back to her. "You need sleep. Real sleep, not passing out from exhaustion. And tomorrow we need to talk about getting you actual help, the kind that comes from professionals who know what they're doing. I have meetings tomorrow. The board is already suspicious about my absences. The board can wait. Your life can't." His voice carried the authority of someone used to making split-second decisions in life or death situations. "Cancel everything. Tell them you have the flu. Tell them you're at a wellness retreat. Tell them whatever you need to tell them. But you're not leaving this apartment until you've slept at least 8 hours and we've figured out a plan." Olivia opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. Something in his expression apparently convinced her that this was not a negotiation. She nodded slowly, the gesture of someone surrendering control for the first time in years. "There's a guest room down the hall. You and Lucas can sleep there. I'll take the couch. Lucas can have the bed. That couch costs more than most cars. At least let me feel like I'm contributing something to this situation." Despite everything, Marcus felt a small smile tug at his lips. "Fine. But if this becomes a regular thing, we're negotiating sleeping arrangements." Olivia matched his almost smile with one of her own, the first genuine expression of lightness he had seen from her. "Deal." He helped her to her feet, walked her to her bedroom door, and waited until he heard the lock engage before returning to the living room. Lucas was already asleep again, sprawled across the couch cushions with the boneless abandon of childhood. Marcus sat in one of the chairs, too tired to sleep, watching his son breathe and thinking about the strange turns life could take. 6 hours ago, he had been a janitor, finishing a shift, a widower, trying to hold his small family together, a man whose world consisted of night cleaning and homework help, and the persistent ache of missing his wife. Now he was sitting in a billionaire's penthouse, having spent the night helping a woman he barely knew fight her way through withdrawal and feeling more purposeful than he had in 2 years. Rachel had told him to stay open to life. He had tried in his limited way to honor that request, but he had never imagined that staying open would lead him here to this unlikely intersection of worlds that should never have touched. His phone buzzed with a text from Gloria Santos, his supervisor at the cleaning company. "Heard you left your shift early last night. Everything okay?" He typed back a response that was true without being complete. "Family emergency. Sorry for the short notice. You're one of my best people, Marcus. Just don't make it a habit." He stared at the screen, thinking about the precarious balance of his life, the job that paid his bills, the son who needed stability, the woman upstairs who had somehow become his responsibility. Gloria was right to warn him. This situation had the potential to unravel everything he had carefully constructed since Rachel's death. But then he thought about Rachel herself, about the way she had looked at him during their last conversation, her face drawn with pain, but her eyes clear and certain. She had made him promise to stay open, and she had meant it. She had known somehow that the grief would try to close him off, would try to convince him that safety lay in isolation. "I can't do this alone." Olivia's words from the phone call echoed in his memory, and beneath them he heard the truth she had not been able to speak, that no one should have to do anything alone, That connection was not weakness, but survival. Marcus put his phone away and closed his eyes. Tomorrow would bring challenges he could not predict, decisions he was not qualified to make, responsibilities that had nothing to do with the life he had planned. But for now, in this moment, he had done what he could. He had shown up. He had stayed. Sometimes that was enough. Sleep came eventually, fitful and shallow, filled with dreams of Rachel that shifted into dreams of Olivia. The two women blurring together until he could not tell where one ended and the other began. He woke to Lucas shaking his shoulder, morning light streaming through windows that probably cost more to clean than he earned in a week. Dad, wake up. The lady is making breakfast. Marcus sat up, disoriented, his back protesting the hours spent in an expensive chair that had not been designed for sleeping. The smell of coffee and bacon reached him from somewhere deeper in the penthouse, impossibly domestic given the circumstances. He found Olivia in the kitchen, standing at a stove that looked like it had never been used, concentrating on a pan of scrambled eggs with the intensity of someone defusing a bomb. She had showered and changed, wearing simple clothes that made her look more human and less like a magazine cover. The shadows under her eyes were still there, but something else was there too. Something that might have been hope. She looked up when he entered, her expression uncertain. I don't actually know how to cook. I've had assistants and delivery services for so long that I forgot kitchens have actual functions. She gestured at the eggs. These might be terrible. Marcus moved to stand beside her, gently taking the spatula from her hand. They're going to be fine. You just need to stir more gently. Here. He demonstrated the motion years of single dad cooking reflected in an easy movement. See, not so hard. Lucas appeared in the doorway, watching the scene with an expression that reminded Marcus painfully of Rachel when she had been trying to figure out how to help someone she loved. Can I have bacon? His voice was hopeful. We don't usually have bacon because it's expensive. Olivia looked at Marcus, then at Lucas, then at the pile of bacon she had optimistically prepared. You can have as much bacon as you want. I bought enough for 20 people because I didn't know how much was normal. Breakfast became something none of them had expected, almost pleasant. They sat at Olivia's enormous dining table, the three of them clustered at one end because the space was designed for dinner parties of 40 and felt absurd for 3 eating eggs that were slightly overcooked and bacon that was almost burned, and somehow it felt like the most normal morning any of them had experienced in a long time. Lucas told Olivia about his school, about his skateboard, about his best friend who had a dog named Biscuit. Olivia listened with genuine attention, asking questions that showed she actually cared about the answers. Marcus watched the interaction, something tightening in his chest at the sight of his son being heard by someone who had everything except people to hear. After breakfast, while Lucas explored the penthouse with the wonder of a child discovering a palace, Marcus and Olivia sat together on the couch where so much had happened the night before. The city spread out beneath them, Los Angeles in full daylight, all its flaws and beauty visible from 47 floors up. I need to tell you something. Olivia's voice was quiet. About why I keep reaching out to you specifically, even though I have access to the best therapists and doctors money can buy. Okay? They all look at me and see a patient, a case study, a problem to be solved, or a paycheck to be collected. She turned to face him. You look at me and see a person, not a CEO, not a billionaire, not a story. Just someone who is struggling and needs help. I can't remember the last time anyone saw me that way. Marcus considered his response. My wife used to say that the most important thing you can give someone isn't advice or solutions. It's the feeling of being truly seen. She said most people go through their whole lives invisible, even to the people who claim to love them. She sounds like she was wise. She was everything. The words came out with a rawness that surprised him. And losing her taught me that none of the other stuff matters. Not money, not status, not achievements. The only thing that matters is connection. Real connection, the kind you can't buy or fake. Olivia was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know how to do that. Connect, I mean. I've been performing for so long that I've forgotten what's real and what's just another role I'm playing. Then maybe this is where you start to figure it out. She looked at him with something vulnerable in her expression, something that did not match the image of the woman who commanded boardrooms and intimidated competitors. Will you help me, not just with the withdrawal, but with all of it? Learning how to be a person again. Marcus thought about his job, his son, his responsibilities. He thought about the impossibility of what she was asking a cleaning man guiding a billionaire through rehabilitation and self-discovery. He thought about Rachel and promises and what it meant to stay open to life, even when life insisted on being complicated. Yes, I'll help you. But you have to understand that I'm not qualified for this. I'm not a doctor or a therapist or anyone who knows what they're doing. I'm just a guy who shows up. Olivia smiled, then a real smile that transformed her face from beautiful to something more. Human, perhaps. Reachable. Sometimes showing up is the most qualified thing anyone can do. Outside the city continued its relentless motion. Somewhere in a boardroom at Sterling Technologies, people were making decisions that would affect thousands of lives. Somewhere else, Richard Blackwell was plotting his next move against a CEO he sensed was vulnerable. Somewhere in Echo Park, a small apartment waited for the family that was slowly learning to expand its definition. But in the penthouse on the 47th floor, 3 people sat in the aftermath of crisis, bound together by nothing except proximity and the peculiar intimacy of shared vulnerability. A billionaire learning to ask for help. A widower learning to let people in. A child learning that family could mean something more than blood. The future stretched before them, uncertain and frightening, and somehow also bright. Whatever came next would be difficult. There would be setbacks, conflicts, moments when the easier path would be to retreat to their separate worlds. But for now, in this moment, they had found something worth protecting. The morning light caught the edge of Olivia's water glass, scattering rainbows across the marble counter. Lucas laughed at something he had discovered in one of the guest rooms. And Marcus sat quietly watching the woman who had somehow become his responsibility, thinking about all the ways that life could surprise you when you stopped trying to control it. Rachel had told him to stay open. He had finally begun to understand what she meant. The call from Gloria Santos came 3 days later, her voice carrying the particular weight of someone delivering news they did not want to give. Marcus stood in his kitchen phone, pressed to his ear, watching Lucas eat breakfast with the mechanical focus of a child who had learned not to ask questions during adult phone calls. Marcus, we need to talk about your schedule. Gloria's words were careful, measured. I've been covering for you, but people are starting to notice. The client at Meridian Tower filed a complaint about inconsistent service on the 35th floor. I understand. I'll make up the hours. It's not about hours. She paused, and Marcus could hear her choosing her next words. There are rumors circulating about you and the Sterling woman, about why you've been distracted. His stomach tightened. What kind of rumors? The kind that get people fired, Marcus. The kind that make clients uncomfortable. Another pause. I don't know what's happening between you and that woman, and honestly, I don't want to know. But you need to decide what's more important, your job or whatever this is. Marcus looked at his son, at the small apartment that depended on his paycheck, at the precarious balance of a life held together by routine and discipline. I hear you, Gloria. I'll figure it out. Figure it out fast. You're one of my best people, but I can't protect you forever. The line went dead. Marcus set down his phone and stood motionless, feeling the walls of his carefully constructed life pressing inward. He had bills to pay, a child to raise, responsibilities that did not care about his impulse to help a woman he barely knew. The smart thing would be to step back, to let Olivia find help through proper channels, to return to the anonymity of night shifts and quiet survival. But then he thought about her face when she talked about her parents, about the way she had gripped his hand like he was the only solid thing in a dissolving world, about Lucas offering water to a stranger because his mother had taught him that kindness was not optional. His phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. Board meeting in 2 hours. Richard is making moves. I need to go in, but I'm not sure I can do this. Marcus typed back without hesitation. You can do it. 1 meeting. 1 hour at a time. I'll be here when you get back. Promise. Promise. He put down the phone and turned to find Lucas watching him with an expression too knowing for 9 years old. His son had inherited Rachel's ability to read people, to sense the currents beneath the surface of ordinary conversation. You're helping the lady again, aren't you? I'm trying to. Lucas nodded slowly, processing this information. Mom would be happy. She always said you were the kind of person who couldn't walk past someone who needed help. The words hit Marcus somewhere deep in the place where grief and love had become indistinguishable. Your mom was smarter than me about most things. She was smarter than everyone. Lucas returned to his cereal, the conversation apparently concluded to his satisfaction. But she picked you, so you must be okay. Marcus laughed despite himself, the sound rusty from disuse. Thanks for the vote of confidence, buddy. You're welcome. The morning passed in domestic routine dishes, washed lunch, packed the walk to school that had become their daily ritual since Rachel's death. Marcus watched his son disappear through the elementary school doors, backpack bouncing, and felt the familiar mixture of pride and terror that came with raising a child alone. Every day was a test he was not sure he was passing. Every decision carried weight he had never anticipated. His phone buzzed again. Olivia. Heading into the meeting now. Wish me luck. You don't need luck. You need to remember that you're the one who built this company. Nobody else. 3 hours later, she called him from her office, her voice vibrating with a tension that made his EMT instincts flare. Richard has photographs. Someone took pictures of me outside a club 3 months ago. I look terrible in them. High, obviously. He's threatening to release them to the board if I don't step down voluntarily. Marcus gripped the phone tighter. What did you tell him? Nothing yet. I walked out of the meeting before I could say something I'd regret. Her breath came ragged through the speaker. Marcus, I want to use so badly right now. Every cell in my body is screaming for it. I know, but you're calling me instead of using. That means something. It means I'm weak. It means I can't handle my own problems. It means you're smart enough to know when you need backup." He kept his voice steady, anchoring her. "Where are you right now?" "My office. The door is locked. I can see the city from here, all those people living their lives, and I keep thinking none of them know. None of them can see what's happening up here." "That's not true. I see it. And I'm telling you that what Richard is doing is blackmail, which is illegal. He's the one who should be scared, not you." Silence stretched across the connection. When Olivia spoke again, her voice was smaller. "What if I just let him win? Step down, walk away. Let someone else deal with all of this. Is that what you want?" "I don't know what I want anymore. I've been so focused on the company for so long that I forgot to figure out what I actually care about." She laughed, bitter and short. 15 years of building an empire, and I can't even answer a simple question about what I want." Marcus thought about his own journey through grief, the long months after Rachel's death, when even basic decisions had felt impossible. You don't have to know everything right now. You just have to get through today. And tomorrow. Tomorrow you get through tomorrow. That's all any of us can do. He heard her take a deep breath, steadying herself. Will you come tonight after your shift? I'll be there. The hours until his shift began crawled past with excruciating slowness. Marcus picked up Lucas from school, helped with homework, made dinner from ingredients that stretched their budget to its limit. His son chattered about friends and teachers and the injustice of multiplication tables, and Marcus listened with half his attention, while the other half remained fixed on his phone, waiting for updates that did not come. At 10 o'clock, he dropped Lucas at Mrs. Patterson's apartment down the hall, the elderly widow who had become their emergency backup since Rachel's passing. She asked no questions, simply accepted the sleeping boy and the $20 Marcus pressed into her hand, her eyes communicating understanding that words would only complicate. The drive to Meridian Tower felt longer than usual, Los Angeles traffic thinning as the night deepened, but his anxiety filling the empty space. He badged in at the service entrance, collected his cleaning cart, and rode the elevator to the 47th floor with a sense of ascending towards something he could not name. Olivia answered her door before he could knock, as if she had been waiting on the other side. She looked worse than he had ever seen her face. Pale eyes, red-rimmed hands trembling despite obvious efforts to control them. But she was still standing, still fighting. "He's going to destroy me." Her voice came out flat, defeated. "Richard has been planning this for years. He has allies on the board I didn't even know about. By this time next week, I won't have a company anymore." Marcus stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Tell me everything, from the beginning." They sat on her couch, the city glittering below them like a promise no one intended to keep, and Olivia talked. She told him about Richard Blackwell's systematic campaign to undermine her authority, about the emails she had discovered suggesting coordination between board members, about the way her own assistant Derek Chen had been avoiding her eyes for weeks. "I trusted him." The words carried the particular pain of betrayal. "Derek has been with me for 3 years. I promoted him, mentored him, treated him like family. And now I think he's been feeding information to Richard the whole time." "Can you prove it?" "Not yet, but the timeline fits. Every time something private leaked, Derek was the only one who knew." Marcus processed this information, his mind shifting into the problem-solving mode that had served him well during emergency calls. "What about Patricia Monroe?" "You said she was trustworthy." "Patricia is loyal, but she's not a fighter. She's good at operations, not politics. Olivia rubbed her temples. I spent so many years focused on building the product that I forgot to watch my back. Now I'm surrounded by people who want to take everything I created. Not everyone. Marcus met her eyes. You have me. You have Patricia. And you have yourself, which is more than Richard probably counted on. What do you mean? He expected you to fold. Expected you to be too strung out, too desperate, too ashamed to fight back. Marcus leaned forward. But you're still here. You're still sober. And you're still the person who built this company from nothing. That person doesn't give up because some suit in a boardroom tries to push her around. Something shifted in Olivia's expression, a spark of the fire that must have driven her to build an empire from a college dorm room. You really believe that I can still win this? I believe you're stronger than you think. I believe the woman who survived losing her parents at 23 and turned that grief into something extraordinary doesn't just roll over when things get hard. That woman has been running on chemicals for 5 years. I don't know if she's still in there. She is. Marcus spoke with absolute certainty. I've seen her. Every time you call me, instead of using every time you get through another day clean, every time you fight the urge that would be so easy to surrender to, that's her. That's who you really are. Olivia stared at him for a long moment, something fragile and hopeful flickering in her eyes. You see things in me that I can't see in myself. That's what friends do. Is that what we are, friends? Marcus considered the question. I don't know what we are. I know that I care about what happens to you. I know that your pain feels like my problem somehow, even though it shouldn't. I know that Rachel would probably tell me I'm being an idiot, but she'd also tell me she's proud of me for showing up. She sounds like someone I would have liked. She would have liked you too. She always had a soft spot for people who were fighting harder battles than they let on. They sat in comfortable silence, two people who had somehow found each other across an impossible divide. The city continued its restless motion below, indifferent to the small dramas playing out in the towers above. Finally, Olivia spoke again. I need to go to treatment. Real treatment, not just white-knuckling it with your help. Professional help, the kind that takes weeks or months. I know. But if I go now, Richard wins. The board will vote me out before I even finish the intake paperwork. So what's your plan? Olivia's jaw tightened with determination. I fight back. 1 more week. I gather evidence. I shore up my alliances. I make it impossible for Richard to win, even if I'm not there. Then I go to treatment with a clear conscience. That's a lot to do in a week, especially while you're still dealing with withdrawal. I know. That's why I need you. She turned to face him fully. Not to fix anything, not to save me. Just to be there. To remind me who I am when I forget. To tell me the truth when everyone else is lying. Marcus thought about Gloria's warning about the rumors already circulating about the risk to his job and his carefully constructed life. He thought about Lucas, about responsibility, about all the reasons he should walk away from this situation that had nothing to do with him. Then he thought about Rachel's face in her final days, about the promises he had made, about the person he had sworn to become in her absence. I'll be here, he said. Whatever you need. The next morning brought chaos. Marcus woke on Olivia's couch to the sound of her phone ringing incessantly, call after call from numbers she did not answer. The news had broken overnight. A gossip website had published the photographs Richard had been holding along with anonymous quotes suggesting the CEO of Sterling Technologies was battling personal demons. Olivia stood at her window phone, clutched in her hand, watching the sunrise with the expression of someone watching their world burn. It's everywhere. Every tech site, every business publication, every social media platform. Her voice was eerily calm. Richard didn't even wait for me to make a decision. He just released everything. What happens now? Emergency board meeting in 4 hours. They'll call for a vote of no confidence. She turned to face him. I'm going to fight it. I'm going to walk into that room and tell them the truth. The truth about everything. About everything. The addiction, the recovery, the plans for treatment. All of it. She squared her shoulders. If they're going to vote me out, they're going to do it, knowing who I really am, not based on Richard's lies. Marcus felt a surge of respect for her courage. Are you sure once you say it, you can't take it back? I've been hiding for 5 years, hiding from my grief, hiding from my problems, hiding from everyone who might see the real me. She met his eyes. I'm tired of hiding. Whatever happens next, at least it will be honest. The 4 hours before the meeting passed in a blur of preparation. Olivia showered and dressed, choosing clothes that were professional, but not armored, present, but not pretending. Marcus made coffee and listened while she practiced what she wanted to say, offering feedback when she asked for it and silence when she did not. Lucas called from school during his lunch break, Mrs. Patterson having delivered him with the excuse of a family emergency. His voice was worried. Dad, are you okay? You didn't come home last night? I'm okay, buddy. I'm helping someone who's having a really hard time. The lady from before. Yeah, she's got a big meeting today and she needed support. Lucas was quiet for a moment. Mom used to say that the best thing you can do for scared people is just stay with them. Are you staying with her? I'm trying to. Good. She seemed nice and sad. People who are nice and sad need extra staying with. Marcus felt his eyes sting. When did you get so smart? Mom taught me. And you teach me too, even when you don't know you're doing it. After the call, Marcus found Olivia watching him with an expression he could not quite read. Your son is extraordinary. He's his mother's child. He's yours too. The way he thinks about people, the way he wants to help, that's learned behavior. She paused. I used to think I wanted children. Before everything. Now I can't imagine being responsible for another human being when I can barely keep myself alive. That might change. People grow. Circumstances shift. Maybe. She looked at her reflection in the window glass, studying herself like a stranger. I should go. The meeting starts in an hour, and I need to get there early. Do you want me to come with you? The question hung between them, carrying more weight than its simple words suggested. Olivia shook her head slowly. No, this is something I need to do alone. But afterward. She hesitated. Will you be here? Whatever happens. I'll be here. She nodded once, sharp and decisive, then gathered her things and walked toward the door. At the threshold, she paused and turned back. Marcus, thank you. Not for fixing anything because you haven't. Just for being the kind of person who shows up. Then she was gone. The door clicking shut behind her, leaving Marcus alone in a penthouse that felt empty without her presence. The hours of waiting stretched interminable. Marcus cleaned the apartment because he needed something to do with his hands, because the familiar routine of surfaces and organization helped quiet his racing thoughts. He checked his phone obsessively, finding no messages from Olivia, but an increasingly worried series of texts from Gloria about his whereabouts. At 2 o'clock, 3 hours after the meeting should have started, his phone finally rang with Olivia's number. "It's done." Her voice sounded strange hollow, but somehow also light. "I told them everything. About the addiction, the recovery attempts, my plans for treatment. I even told them about you. About me. About the man who found me on my bathroom floor and chose to help instead of calling the tabloids. About the person who reminded me that I was worth saving." She laughed, the sound carrying genuine amusement. You should have seen Richard's face. He was so sure I would crumble, so certain I would play the victim. Instead, I stood there and told them the truth, and he had no idea what to do with it. What was the vote? 6-2 in my favor. Richard and his closest ally voted against me, but everyone else... She paused, emotion thick in her voice. Catherine Lee stood up after I finished speaking and said she had never been more proud to serve on my board. Said that honesty was rarer than competence, and that she would rather follow someone brave enough to admit weakness than someone too cowardly to acknowledge it. Marcus felt relief flood through him, tension he had not realized he was holding finally releasing. "So you're staying..." "I'm taking a leave of absence. 90 days for treatment with Patricia running operations in my absence." The board agreed unanimously after Richard stormed out. She was quiet for a moment. "I'm going to be okay, Marcus. For the first time in years, I actually believe that. You were always going to be okay. You just needed to remember how to fight for yourself." I had help remembering. After the call, Marcus sat motionless on Olivia's couch, processing what had just happened. He had watched a woman walk into a room full of people who wanted to destroy her and emerge victorious through nothing but honesty. It seemed almost impossible, a fairy tale ending in a world that rarely offered such things. His phone buzzed with another call, this time from a number he did not recognize. "Mr. Webb, this is Patricia Monroe, COO of Sterling Technologies. We met briefly last week." Marcus straightened unconsciously. "Yes, of course. How can I help you?" "I wanted to thank you personally for what you've done for Olivia. She told the board about your role in her recovery, and I think it made a difference. Knowing she had someone in her corner who wasn't motivated by money or position." Patricia's voice carried professional warmth. "She also mentioned that your job situation might be complicated by your involvement with her. It's manageable. Nevertheless, I wanted you to know that Sterling Technologies takes care of the people who take care of us. If your current employer becomes untenable, please reach out. We might be able to find a position that suits your skills." Marcus was not sure how to respond to this offer, so he simply thanked her and ended the call. The idea of working for Olivia's company felt strange too. Entangled too much like crossing a line he had been careful to maintain. But he filed the information away, aware that his situation with Gloria was growing increasingly precarious. Olivia returned to the penthouse 2 hours later, looking exhausted, but somehow also younger, lighter, as if telling the truth had physically lifted weight from her shoulders. She found Marcus in the kitchen washing dishes that did not need washing, and she stood in the doorway watching him for a long moment before speaking. "I'm leaving tomorrow for Serenity Hills. It's a treatment center in Malibu. 90 days no contact for the first 30 except for emergencies." Marcus turned to face her, drying his hands on a towel. That's fast. I don't want to give myself time to talk myself out of it. She moved closer, leaning against the counter. But before I go, I need to say something. Okay? You saved my life. Not metaphorically, not in some abstract sense. Literally. If you hadn't found me that night, if you hadn't stayed, if you hadn't been the kind of person who refuses to look away from suffering, she took a breath. I would be dead. Or worse, I would still be dying slowly in this apartment, surrounded by everything money can buy and nothing that actually matters. You saved yourself. I just reminded you that you could. Maybe. But the reminder mattered. She reached out and took his hand, the gesture simple and profound. I don't know what happens next. I don't know who I'll be after 90 days of therapy and recovery. But I know that whoever she is, she'll remember the man who saw her at her worst and stayed anyway. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a recognition of how deeply this strange connection had affected him. Just come back. That's all I ask. Come back and let me see who you become. Will you be here when I get out? I'll be here. She squeezed his hand, once then released it. I should pack, and you should go home to your son. He's waited long enough for his father. Marcus nodded, gathering his things, preparing to return to the life that waited for him beyond these glass walls. At the door, he paused and looked back at Olivia, standing in the middle of her enormous living room, small and solitary, and somehow also stronger than he had ever seen her. Olivia, for what it's worth, I think your parents would be proud of you. Not because of the company or the money, because of this, because you're choosing to live. Her eyes glistened, but she did not cry. That's worth everything. The drive home felt like traveling between worlds, from the glass towers of the wealthy to the modest streets where Marcus actually lived. He found Lucas asleep on Mrs. Patterson's couch, carried him gently back to their apartment, tucked him into the bed that took up most of their small bedroom. Standing in the doorway, watching his son sleep, Marcus thought about the strange journey that had begun with a door left ajar and a woman dying on marble floors. He thought about Rachel and the promises he had made, about Olivia and the person she was fighting to become, about Lucas and the kind of man he was trying to model for his son. Life had become complicated in ways he never anticipated. His job was at risk, his routine was shattered, and his heart was involved in matters that made no logical sense. But somehow, impossibly, he felt more alive than he had in years. Rachel had told him to stay open. He had finally begun to understand what that meant. The morning after Olivia left for treatment, Marcus's phone rang with a call from Derek Chen. The voice on the other end was nervous, guilty, barely recognizable from the confident assistant Marcus had glimpsed in passing. Mr. Webb, I need to speak with you, urgently, about Richard Blackwell and what I've done. Marcus agreed to meet him at a coffee shop in Venice Beach, the same place he had first talked with Olivia about her past. Derek arrived looking like a man who had not slept in days, his professional polish cracked and peeling. I betrayed her. The words came out in a rush. I fed information to Richard for months. He promised me advancement, a future, a way out of being someone's assistant forever. Derek's hands shook around his coffee cup. I didn't know what he was planning to do with it. I thought it was just business intelligence, competitive stuff. I didn't know he was going to try to destroy her. But you suspected. Yes? Derek's face crumpled. And I did it anyway, because I was scared and ambitious and too weak to say no to power. Marcus studied the young man across from him, seeing the genuine remorse beneath the self-pity. Why are you telling me this? Because the board vote wasn't the end. Richard is planning something else, something bigger. He's been making calls to investors, to journalists, to people outside the company. Whatever he's doing next, it won't just hurt Olivia. It could bring down the whole company. And you want to help stop him. Derek nodded miserably. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know Olivia will probably never speak to me again. But maybe if I can help fix what I broke. He trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Marcus considered his options. He could walk away from this, let the corporate drama play out without his involvement. He could protect himself and Lucas by maintaining the distance that common sense demanded. But he thought about Olivia in that treatment center fighting the hardest battle of her life while enemies gathered outside the walls. He thought about all the people whose jobs depended on Sterling Technologies surviving. He thought about the kind of man he wanted his son to see when he looked at his father. Tell me everything you know about Richard's plans. The information Derek provided was damning and comprehensive. Richard had been coordinating with a hostile investor group for months, positioning himself to force a sale of the company to people who would strip it for parts. The photographs of Olivia had been just the opening salvo in a campaign designed to destroy her credibility and clear the way for a takeover. Marcus took careful notes, asked clarifying questions, built a picture of the conspiracy that threatened to consume everything Olivia had built. By the time Derek finished talking, Marcus understood that this was bigger than one woman's recovery. This was about whether honesty and courage could actually triumph over money and power. He called Patricia Monroe that afternoon, laying out what he had learned with methodical precision. Patricia listened without interrupting her silence, somehow more compelling than words would have been. "This is serious," she said when he finished. "If Richard is working with outside investors to force a sale, we need to get ahead of it. Olivia put me in charge for a reason, and I intend to honor that trust. What can I do to help?" Patricia was quiet for a moment. "You've already done more than anyone could ask. But if you're willing, there might be something. The investors Richard is working with, they don't know Olivia's real story. They only know what he's told them. What if we could change that narrative? How? By telling the truth. The same weapon that saved her in the boardroom might save the company from outside." Patricia's voice carried determination. "Would you be willing to speak to a journalist? Tell them what you saw, what you did, who Olivia really is." Marcus thought about the implications. His face in the news, his name connected to the Sterling saga, the complete destruction of any anonymity he had maintained. "Let me think about it." "Of course. But Marcus' time is short. Richard is moving fast, and we need to move faster." That night, Marcus sat with Lucas at their small kitchen table, eating spaghetti from a recipe Rachel had taught him years ago. His son chattered about school and friends, unaware of the weight his father carried. "Dad," Lucas's voice cut through Marcus's distraction, "you're doing the thing again. The thinking too hard thing." "Sorry, buddy. I've got a lot on my mind." "Is it about the lady Olivia?" Marcus hesitated, unsure how much to share with a 9-year-old. "Partly. She's somewhere safe now getting help. But there are people trying to hurt her even while she's away." Lucas considered this with the seriousness that always surprised Marcus. "That's mean. Hurting someone who can't fight back." "Yes, it is." "So are you going to help her fight?" The question cut to the heart of Marcus's dilemma. I'm not sure I can. It's complicated. There might be consequences for us. What kind of consequences? People might know who I am, might talk about me, might make our lives harder. Lucas was quiet for a moment, twirling spaghetti around his fork. Mom always said that doing the right thing is hard. That's why most people don't do it. He looked up at his father. But you're not most people, Dad. You're the kind who helps. Marcus felt his throat tighten. When did you get so wise? I've been paying attention. Lucas grinned, and for a moment he looked so much like Rachel that Marcus could hardly breathe. Plus, if you help her, and she gets better, maybe she'll be our friend forever. And we don't have that many friends. The child's logic was both devastating and clarifying. Marcus reached across the table and ruffled his son's hair. You're right. We don't have that many friends. So you'll help. Marcus thought about Rachel and promises, about Olivia and redemption, about Lucas and the example he wanted to set. The answer had been clear all along. He had just been afraid to acknowledge it. Yeah, buddy, I'll help. The interview happened 3 days later in the offices of the Los Angeles Times. Sarah Chen, the journalist Patricia had connected him with, turned out to be thorough, but fair, more interested in truth than sensation. Marcus told her everything he felt comfortable sharing, finding Olivia, recognizing the signs of overdose, the weeks of support and recovery. He carefully omitted details that felt too private, protecting the vulnerability Olivia had shown him while still conveying the essential narrative. You could have sold this story to a tabloid for a fortune, Sarah observed when he finished. Why didn't you? Because it's not a story to me. It's a person's life. A person who trusted me when she had no reason to trust anyone. That's unusually principled for someone in your position. Marcus shrugged. I'm a cleaning man. I don't have a position. All I have is what I can live with when I look in the mirror. The article appeared the following week under the headline, The Cleaner and the CEO Inside Olivia Sterling's Fight for Survival. It told the story of a woman's collapse and recovery of corporate treachery and personal redemption of the unlikely connection between a night janitor and a billionaire. It painted Richard Blackwell as the villain he was exposed, the investor conspiracy he had orchestrated, and transformed public perception of the Sterling Technologies drama from scandal to inspiration. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The investor group Richard had been working with withdrew their bid, unwilling to be associated with the negative press. Sterling's stock price stabilized, then began to climb as the narrative shifted from crisis to comeback. Patricia Monroe gave interviews praising Olivia's courage and Marcus's integrity, positioning the company as an example of transparency in an industry rife with secrecy. 3 weeks after the LA Times article appeared, Richard Blackwell's world collapsed in ways he had never anticipated. The SEC launched a formal investigation into his stock trades during the weeks leading up to the photograph leak trades that showed a pattern too consistent to be coincidence. Federal agents arrived at his office on a Tuesday morning, the same office where he had once plotted Olivia's downfall, and escorted him out in handcuffs while junior analysts watched through glass walls. The charges read like a catalog of corporate sins, securities, fraud, insider trading conspiracy to manipulate stock prices. Derek Chen's testimony, given in exchange for immunity, provided the final pieces of evidence prosecutors needed. Richard's lawyers negotiated a plea deal that kept him out of federal prison but ended his career permanently. He would never sit on another board, never wield power over another company, never threaten another CEO who had the audacity to be human. When Patricia called to tell Marcus the news, he felt no satisfaction, only relief that one chapter had finally closed. And Marcus Webb, the night cleaning man from Echo Park, became something he had never expected or wanted: a minor celebrity. Strangers recognized him on the street. Gloria Santos called to tell him he was famous and also fired the liability too great for her to ignore. Job offers flooded his inbox, some legitimate and some exploitative. Lucas came home from school reporting that his classmates had seen his dad on the news. Through it all, Marcus tried to maintain the routines that had kept him sane since Rachel's death: morning coffee, school drop-off, afternoon homework, dinner from recipes his wife had taught him. But everything felt different now, charged with a significance he had not asked for. 6 weeks into Olivia's treatment, when the media attention had begun to fade, and Marcus had accepted a position at Sterling Technologies as a community outreach coordinator, his phone rang with a call from Serenity Hills. "Marcus?" Olivia's voice sounded different, clearer, stronger. "They're letting me make calls now. I wanted to hear your voice. How are you?" She paused, searching for the right word. "Present. For the first time in years, I actually feel present, like I'm living my life instead of watching it from somewhere far away." "That sounds like progress." "It is. Dr. Hayes says I'm one of the most determined patients she's ever worked with." Olivia laughed, the sound carrying genuine warmth. "I told her I had someone waiting for me, someone who believed I was worth the effort of getting better." "I read about what you did," she continued. "The interview, the article. Patricia sent me copies after the media blackout lifted. You risked everything to tell the truth about me." "I told the truth about both of us. That's different than risking everything." "It wasn't nothing, Marcus. You could have stayed invisible. You chose to step into the light because you thought it would help me." "Did it?" "Knowing someone was fighting for me while I was fighting for myself." Her voice cracked slightly. "Yes, it helped more than you could possibly know." They talked for an hour, covering everything and nothing, building the connection that had formed in crisis into something more durable. Olivia told him about therapy sessions and group meetings and the slow process of excavating a self she had buried years ago. Marcus told her about Lucas and the new job and the strange experience of being recognized by strangers who thought they knew his story. "I'm coming home in 6 weeks," she said as the call wound down. "I want you to be there. You and Lucas, both. I want to start this next chapter with the people who matter. We'll be there." "And Marcus," her voice grew serious, "thank you for seeing me, for staying, for being exactly what I needed when I needed it. You would have found your way eventually. Maybe. But you made it faster and less lonely." She paused. "I love you. Not in a complicated way. Not in a way that demands anything. Just in the way that one person loves another who has been kind when the world was cruel." Marcus felt the words settle into him, finding a place alongside his grief for Rachel and his love for Lucas. "I love you too. In exactly the same way." After the call, he sat in his small apartment and let himself feel the enormity of what had happened. He had gone from invisible to visible, from observer to participant, from someone who cleaned up after other people's lives to someone who was actively shaping his own. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Lucas found him there an hour later, sitting in the gathering darkness, and climbed onto the couch beside him without asking questions. She called his son's intuition was uncanny. She did. Is she okay? She's getting better. She's coming home in 6 weeks. Lucas nodded, satisfied. Good. I like her. And you need someone besides me to take care of. Marcus laughed, pulling his son close. Is that what you think, that I need more people to worry about? Mom said you have too much love for just one person. She said that's why you were a firefighter, because you needed to help strangers. Lucas looked up at him. I think Olivia stopped being a stranger. I think she's family now. The word hung in the air between them, carrying weight that Marcus was not sure he was ready to acknowledge. Family. The thing he had lost when Rachel died. The thing he had been slowly rebuilding with Lucas. The thing that might now include a woman he had met on a bathroom floor in a moment of crisis. Maybe, he said finally, maybe she is. That's good. Lucas snuggled closer. Families should be bigger than 2 people. Mom said that too. Of course Rachel had said that. She had said so many things that Marcus was only now beginning to understand wisdom deposited like seeds that waited for the right conditions to grow. Outside their small apartment, Los Angeles continued its restless motion. Somewhere in Malibu, Olivia Sterling was fighting to become the person she had always been capable of being. Somewhere in corporate towers, the aftermath of Richard Blackwell's schemes continued to unfold. Somewhere in the vast network of human connection, new possibilities were taking shape. But here in this moment, there was just a father and son sitting together in the darkness, talking about family and love and the strange ways that life could surprise you when you stopped trying to control it. Dad, Lucas's voice was growing sleepy. Yeah, buddy. I'm glad you helped her, even though it was hard, even though it changed things. Me too, son. Me too. And outside the window, the city lights flickered on one by one, each one, a small beacon against the darkness, each one a reminder that even in the vastness of Los Angeles connection was possible. That love could find you when you least expected it. That second chances were real for those brave enough to reach for them. Inside the sun-filled office at Serenity Hills, Dr. Miranda Hayes set down her notepad and studied the woman across from her. Olivia Sterling had arrived 90 days ago, looking like a ghost, wearing expensive clothes. Now she sat with her shoulders straight, her eyes clear, her hands steady on her lap. You're ready, Dr. Hayes said. It was not a question. I'm terrified. Good. Terror means you understand what's at stake. The therapist leaned forward. Olivia, I've worked with hundreds of patients. Most of them come here because they have to. You stayed because you wanted to. That's the difference between recovery and relapse. What if I fail? What if I get back to the real world and everything falls apart? Then you call me. You call Marcus. You call anyone except the part of yourself that thinks using is the answer. Dr. Hayes smiled. You've spent 15 years believing you had to be perfect to be worthy of love. The truth is the opposite. You're worthy because you're imperfect. Because you fell and chose to get back up. Olivia felt the words settle into her chest like seeds finding soil. Tomorrow, she would leave this place. Tomorrow, she would find out if 90 days had been enough to become someone new. The morning Olivia Sterling came home from Serenity Hills dawned gray and soft over Los Angeles, the marine layer wrapping the city in a cocoon of muted light that felt appropriate for a day of new beginnings. Marcus woke before his alarm, a habit from his firefighting days that had never quite faded, and lay in the darkness of his small apartment, listening to Lucas breathe in the next room. 90 days had passed since he watched Olivia drive away in a black sedan, her face pale but determined through the tinted glass. 90 days of building a new life from the wreckage of the old one, of learning to be visible after years of cultivating invisibility, of fielding calls from journalists and job offers and strangers who thought they knew his story because they had read about it in a newspaper. The Sterling Technologies position had transformed his circumstances in ways both practical and profound. His salary had tripled. Lucas now had his own bedroom in a 2-bedroom apartment in Santa Monica, close enough to smell the ocean on certain mornings. The constant anxiety about bills and groceries and whether the car would survive another month had faded into something manageable, replaced by a different kind of uncertainty that money could not address. Marcus rose and made coffee, moving through the unfamiliar kitchen with the careful attention of someone still learning a new space. The apartment was bigger than anywhere he had lived since selling the house after Rachel's death, and sometimes the extra room felt like accusation, all that space for a family that had shrunk to 2. Lucas emerged at 7, hair wild from sleep, already dressed for the day in clothes Marcus had laid out the night before. His son had grown in the past 3 months, shooting up in the way 10-year-olds sometimes did his jeans, suddenly too short, and his shoes pinching at the toes. Today's the day, right? Lucas poured himself cereal with the practiced efficiency of a child who had learned young to handle morning routines independently. Olivia comes home. Today's the day. Are you nervous? The question caught Marcus off guard. He considered lying, considered the parental instinct to project calm confidence, then remembered that Lucas had inherited Rachel's ability to detect dishonesty. A little. She's been through a lot. She might be different. Different how? I don't know. That's what makes it nervous. Lucas chewed his cereal thoughtfully. Mom was different after she got sick. Not bad different. Just different. Like she was paying more attention to stuff she used to ignore. Marcus felt the familiar ache that came whenever Lucas mentioned Rachel so casually, this child who carried his grief like a backpack he had learned to forget he was wearing. What kind of stuff? Sunsets, the way I laughed, you making breakfast? Lucas shrugged. She said getting sick taught her what mattered. Maybe getting better teaches you the same thing. The drive to Serenity Hills took an hour and a half in light Saturday traffic, winding up the Pacific Coast Highway, past beaches where joggers traced lines in the sand and surfers waited for waves that might never come. Lucas pressed his face to the window, cataloging the ocean with the intensity of a child raised in landlocked neighborhoods, his excitement building as they climbed into the Malibu hills. The treatment center appeared around a curve in the road, its architecture designed to suggest serenity through clean lines and natural materials. A fountain burbled in the circular driveway, and flowering plants lined walkways that led to buildings scattered across the hillside like meditation retreats. Everything about the place whispered money and discretion, a sanctuary for those who could afford to fall apart in comfort. Olivia was waiting on a bench near the main entrance, a small suitcase beside her, her face turned toward the sun with eyes closed. She wore simple clothes jeans and a white blouse, her hair shorter than Marcus remembered, and her face bare of makeup. She looked younger without the armor of corporate presentation, more vulnerable and more real. Lucas was out of the car before Marcus had fully stopped running across the manicured lawn with the heedless energy of childhood. Olivia's eyes opened at the sound of his footsteps, and something in her expression softened as she watched him approach. "You came." Her voice carried wonder, as if she had not quite believed this moment would arrive, despite all the planning and promises. "We said we would." Lucas stopped a few feet away, suddenly shy. "You look different. Good different." "I feel different." Olivia smiled, and the expression transformed her face in ways Marcus had never seen before, carrying genuine warmth instead of the calculated charm she had deployed in her professional life. "I feel like myself for the first time in years." Marcus approached more slowly, giving them space to find their rhythm. He watched Olivia interact with his son, noting the patience in her responses, the way she listened without immediately formulating replies. The absence of the manic energy that had characterized their early encounters. "Hi." The word felt inadequate for everything it needed to contain. "Hi yourself." Olivia stood, her eyes meeting his with an openness that made him catch his breath. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for everything." "How do you feel?" Terrified, excited, grateful. She laughed at her own inventory. "Dr. Hayes says those are all appropriate emotions for this moment. She also says I should stop analyzing my emotions and just feel them, which is harder than it sounds." Progress. Progress. Olivia looked around at the treatment center, at the hills and the ocean visible in the distance, at the life she was leaving behind and the one she was about to reclaim. "I spent 90 days learning how to be a person again. Now I get to find out if I can do it in the real world." They drove back to the city together, Olivia in the passenger seat, Lucas chattering from the back about school and skateboarding and all the things that had happened in her absence. She listened with genuine attention, asking questions that showed she cared about the answers, laughing at his jokes, even when they were not particularly funny. Marcus watched them interact through quick glances in the rearview mirror, something loosening in his chest that he had not realized was tight. Whatever changes Olivia had undergone at Serenity Hills, they had not diminished the connection she had formed with his son. If anything, her presence felt more solid, now more grounded, less like a ghost, haunting her own life. "Where are we going?" Olivia asked as they merged onto the Pacific Coast Highway, heading south. "I thought we could have lunch at our place, if you're not too tired." "Your place." Something flickered across her face, surprise mixed with pleasure. "I'd like that." The Santa Monica apartment was modest by any standards connected to Olivia's world, but Marcus had tried to make it welcoming. Fresh flowers on the kitchen table, windows open to catch the ocean breeze, the smell of the lasagna he had prepared the night before warming in the oven. Olivia stood in the doorway for a long moment, taking in the space with an expression Marcus could not quite read. 2 bedrooms, a living room with a second-hand couch, and Lucas's artwork covering the walls. A kitchen barely big enough for one person to cook in. A life built on love rather than money, functional rather than impressive. "It's beautiful," she said finally, and the sincerity in her voice made the simple words carry weight. "It's small. It's real." She moved further inside, trailing her fingers across the back of the couch, studying the photographs on the shelf near the window. "These are different from your old place." I finally unpacked Rachel's things. Her pictures, her books, the stuff I'd been keeping in boxes because I couldn't face it. Marcus joined her at the shelf, pointing to a framed photo of Rachel holding infant Lucas. Dr. Hayes wasn't the only one doing therapeutic work these past 3 months. "You saw someone." "The company has good benefits. I figured if I was going to ask you to do the hard work, I should probably do some of my own." Olivia turned to face him, her eyes bright. "Marcus Webb going to therapy. I never would have predicted that. People change. Yes, she held his gaze. They do. Lunch was a chaotic affair, Lucas dominating the conversation with the enthusiasm of someone who had been storing up things to share for 3 months. He told Olivia about his new school, his new friends, his ongoing attempts to master skateboarding, despite repeated failures that left his knees permanently scabbed. She listened and laughed and asked questions present in a way that felt different from before, more grounded, more there. After they ate, Lucas retreated to his room to finish homework. He had been avoiding, and Marcus and Olivia sat together on the small balcony overlooking a courtyard where palm trees swayed in the afternoon breeze. "Tell me about treatment." Marcus handed her a cup of tea. "The real version, not the press release." Olivia wrapped her hands around the mug, staring into the steam. The first 2 weeks were hell. Physical withdrawal, psychological withdrawal. The shame of being in a place like that, even though everyone there was dealing with something similar. I wanted to leave every single day. "What kept you?" "Spite mostly. Richard Blackwell thought I would fail. I refused to give him the satisfaction." She smiled ruefully. "Dr. Hayes says spite is not the most therapeutic motivation, but she also says whatever works is valid." And after the spite wore off, then it got harder. Olivia set down her tea, tucking her legs beneath her on the chair. I had to actually feel things. All the grief about my parents that I'd been numbing for 15 years. All the fear about who I was without the company and the success and the constant motion. All the loneliness of spending a decade pushing away everyone who might have actually cared about me. That sounds brutal. It was, but also necessary. She turned to face him. I spent so long running from my parents' death that I never actually mourned them. Never let myself be angry at the drunk driver who killed them. Never let myself feel guilty about the 20 minutes without also punishing myself for it. Never just sat with the loss and let it be what it was. And now I miss them. Clearly, simply without all the complicated layers I'd built on top of it. I miss my mom's voice and my dad's bad jokes and the way they looked at each other across the dinner table. Her eyes glistened, but she did not cry. Dr. Hayes says grief that gets processed eventually becomes something you carry with you rather than something that carries you. I'm not sure I'm there yet, but I can see the path. Marcus thought about his own grief for Rachel, the way it had evolved from crushing weight to constant companion to something more complex that he was still learning to navigate. It takes time, more than anyone tells you. Speaking from experience. Yeah. He looked out at the courtyard at the palm trees and the late afternoon light painting everything gold. Rachel's been gone 2 years. Some days it feels like yesterday. Other days it feels like someone else's life. And some days I can finally think about her without feeling like I'm being hollowed out. Is this one of those days? It is, actually. He met her eyes. I think meeting you helped with that. Having something to focus on besides my own loss. Remembering that I still had something to offer. Olivia was quiet for a moment. You saved my life, Marcus. I don't think I've ever said that plainly enough. Whatever else happens between us, that's true. You saw me when I was invisible, and you refused to look away. You did the same for me. Showed me I wasn't just a ghost haunting my own life. They sat together as the afternoon faded, talking about everything and nothing, rebuilding the connection that had formed in crisis into something more durable, Olivia told him about the plans she had made during treatment, reduced involvement in the company, focus on the foundation, building a life that included things besides work for the first time since she was 23. Marcus told her about his new job, about the satisfaction of helping other people navigate difficult circumstances, about Lucas's adjustment to their changed circumstances. When Lucas emerged from his room demanding dinner, they ordered pizza and watched a movie together, the three of them squeezed onto the small couch like a family that had always existed rather than one that was just beginning to form. Olivia fell asleep before the credits rolled, her head tipping sideways onto Marcus's shoulder, exhausted from the journey home and the emotional weight of the day. Marcus did not move, barely breathed, afraid to disturb the moment. Lucas caught his eye from the other end of the couch and grinned. "She's tired," his son whispered. "Long day. It's nice, though, having her here." Lucas considered his words carefully. "She fits, like she was always supposed to be part of us." Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a door opening that he had kept firmly closed since Rachel's death. "Yeah, buddy. She does." The weeks that followed established a new rhythm, one that incorporated Olivia into the fabric of their daily lives without forcing anything or rushing toward definitions. She came for dinner twice a week, helping with homework and listening to Lucas's endless stories about school drama. She and Marcus walked on the beach on Saturday mornings while Lucas slept in processing their respective recoveries, in the kind of meandering conversations that required ocean waves as backdrop. Her return to Sterling Technologies was gradual and carefully managed. Patricia Monroe remained in charge of daily operations, while Olivia focused on the Second Chances Foundation, the nonprofit she had announced at the board meeting and now worked to build into something meaningful. The organization would provide treatment funding for people in high-pressure industries who could not afford the discretion of places like Serenity Hills, a practical response to the crisis she had survived. Marcus watched her navigate this new role with something like awe. The woman who had been dying on a bathroom floor 6 months ago now spent her days in meetings with treatment providers and mental health advocates, channeling her considerable abilities toward helping others instead of accumulating more success for herself. "You seem happy," he told her one evening after Lucas had gone to bed, and they were sitting together on the balcony, watching the lights of the city. "I'm getting there." Olivia smiled, and the expression carried none of the calculated charm of her old public persona. "It's strange building a life from scratch when you're almost 40. Everything I knew about myself turned out to be wrong, so now I get to figure out what's actually true." "What have you figured out so far?" She thought about it. "That I like mornings better than nights. That I prefer small dinners with people I care about to huge parties full of people trying to impress me. That I'm terrible at cooking, but I enjoy trying anyway." She turned to look at him. "That I feel most like myself when I'm with you and Lucas." Marcus felt the words settle into him, carrying weight he was not sure he was ready to bear. "Olivia, I'm not asking for anything." She held up a hand. "I know this is complicated. I know you lost Rachel. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this doesn't make sense." She took a breath. "But I also know that I love you. That I love Lucas. That whatever we are to each other, it's the most real thing I've experienced since my parents died." The silence stretched between them, filled with ocean sounds and distant traffic, and the weight of decisions that would shape the rest of their lives. Marcus thought about Rachel, about the promise he had made to stay open to life, about Lucas, about the example he wanted to set for his son, about Olivia, about the woman she had become through suffering. and about what she might continue to become with support and time. "I'm scared," he said finally. "Not of you, of how much I feel, of losing someone again." "I know. I'm scared too." Olivia reached for his hand. "But here's what I learned in treatment. You can be scared and still move forward. Fear isn't a reason to stop. It's just information about what matters." Dr. Hayes' wisdom. Partly, and partly my own hard-won understanding. She squeezed his hand. "I'm not asking you to decide anything tonight. I'm just telling you where I stand. Take whatever time you need." Marcus looked at their joined hands at the woman beside him who had fought her way back from the edge of death at the life that was slowly becoming something he had never imagined possible. He thought about all the reasons to be cautious, all the ways this could go wrong, all the sensible arguments for maintaining distance and protecting his heart. Then he thought about Lucas asleep in the next room, about the way his son lit up when Olivia arrived for dinner, about the family they were becoming despite no one planning it. "I don't need more time." The words came out before he could second guess them. "I know what I feel. I've known for a while. I was just afraid to say it." "And what do you feel?" He turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. "I love you. Not the way I loved Rachel, because that was its own thing and always will be. But I love you in a way that feels true and real and terrifying because of how much I don't want to lose it." Olivia's eyes filled with tears that did not fall. "Marcus, let me finish." He took a breath. "I'm not good at this. At opening up, at being vulnerable, at all the things you're supposed to do in relationships. I spent 2 years after Rachel died building walls because I thought they would protect me. Then you came along and crashed through all of them without even trying. I didn't mean to crash. I know. That's what made it work." He smiled despite the emotion tightening his throat. "You needed help. And I needed to feel useful. You were broken and I was broken, and somehow together we started becoming something less broken." Olivia laughed through her tears. "That's the most unromantic romantic thing anyone has ever said to me. I'm a cleaning man who became a community outreach coordinator. Romance isn't really my area. I think you're better at it than you realize." She leaned forward and kissed him soft and careful, like someone handling something precious. When she pulled back, her smile carried no shadows. "Now what? Now we figure it out together. Take it slow. See what happens." "I can do slow." She settled against his shoulder, fitting into the space beside him, like she had always belonged there. "I've spent 5 years running at full speed. Slow sounds like heaven." They sat together as the night deepened, talking about nothing important, letting the silence between words carry as much meaning as the words themselves. Somewhere in the city, millions of people were living their lives, fighting their battles, making their choices. But here on this small balcony, overlooking the ocean, 2 people were choosing each other. 6 months later, they gathered in the ballroom of the Biltmore Hotel for the official launch of the Second Chances Foundation. 300 guests filled the space business leaders and medical professionals, politicians and philanthropists, journalists who had followed the story from scandal to redemption. But Marcus noticed only the 3 people who mattered. Olivia at the podium, radiant in a simple blue dress, her confidence genuine rather than performed. Lucas in the front row wearing his first suit and fidgeting with the tie Marcus had spent 20 minutes helping him adjust. and Rachel somehow present in the love that filled the room, in the life that continued, despite her absence, in the man her husband was still becoming. Olivia's speech was shorter than the audience expected, more personal than any CEO address. She talked about her parents and the grief she had buried under achievement, about the addiction that had nearly killed her and the recovery that had taught her how to live, about the man who had found her on a bathroom floor and chosen to help instead of judge. The Second Chances Foundation exists because I got a second chance, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the ballroom. Not because I deserved it, not because I earned it, but because one person decided that I was worth saving even when I couldn't see it myself. She looked directly at Marcus, and because he taught me that the most important thing you can do for another person isn't fix their problems or solve their crises. It's simply be there, refuse to look away, choose presence over distance. The applause was long and genuine, carrying emotion that transcended polite appreciation. Marcus watched Olivia work the room afterward, accepting congratulations and business cards with grace, channeling her considerable social abilities towards something meaningful for the first time in her career. Lucas tugged on his sleeve. "Dad, can we go get cake now?" "In a minute, buddy." "You said that an hour ago." "Fair point." Marcus looked around for the dessert table, then froze as he spotted a familiar face across the room. Derek Chen stood near the exit, looking uncomfortable in a suit that did not quite fit his expression, caught between guilt and determination. "Stay here," Marcus told Lucas. "I'll be right back." He crossed the ballroom, weaving through clusters of guests until he reached the man who had betrayed Olivia to Richard Blackwell. Derek straightened as he approached, bracing for confrontation. "Mr. Webb, I didn't know if I should come. Patricia said it was okay, but..." "It's fine." Marcus kept his voice neutral. "Olivia knows what you did. She also knows you helped expose Richard when it mattered. That doesn't make up for what I did before." "No, it doesn't." Marcus studied the younger man, reading the genuine remorse beneath the nervousness. But people change. Sometimes they get second chances. Derek's eyes widened. "Are you saying..." "I'm saying Olivia believes in redemption. The whole foundation is built on it. If you're serious about making amends, there might be a place for you here. Administrative work, nothing fancy. A chance to prove you've learned something." For a long moment, Derek could not speak. When he finally found words, they came out rough with emotion. "I don't know how to thank you." "Don't thank me. Show up. Do the work. Become someone worth the second chance." Marcus left him standing there and returned to find Lucas deep in conversation with Patricia Monroe about the relative merits of chocolate versus vanilla cake. He collected his son and made their way to the dessert table, loading plates with the seriousness the occasion demanded. Olivia found them there 20 minutes later, her public duties finally complete. She had kicked off her heels, and her hair was coming loose from its careful arrangement, and she looked more beautiful than Marcus had ever seen her. Hiding with the cake, she snagged a forkful from Lucas's plate. Solid strategy. Best part of any party. Lucas defended his dessert from further theft. "Dad, tell her, this is my cake." "Your cake, very important boundaries." Olivia laughed the sound, carrying pure joy without shadows or complications. "I saw you talking to Derek. What was that about?" "Giving him a chance. Seemed appropriate given the occasion." She considered this, then nodded. "People can change. I'm proof of that." "You're proof of a lot of things." Marcus set down his plate and took her hand. Proof that honesty is stronger than secrets. Proof that asking for help is braver than pretending you don't need it. Proof that second chances are real if you're willing to fight for them. That sounds like a speech. Maybe I'm learning from you. Lucas groaned. You guys are going to be gross again, aren't you? Probably. Marcus pulled Olivia closer. Want to practice being grossed out? I'm going to find more cake. Lucas retreated with his plate, leaving them alone in the corner of the ballroom. Olivia leaned into Marcus's embrace, her head finding the hollow of his shoulder. Thank you. For tonight. For everything. You built this. You did the work. I just showed up. You showed up when no one else did. That's everything. She lifted her head to meet his eyes. I keep waiting to wake up and discover this isn't real. That I'm still in the penthouse alone, dying by inches. That you were just something I imagined because I needed someone to be real. I'm real. This is real. He kissed her forehead. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Around them, the party continued. Guests clinked glasses and exchanged cards. Journalists sought quotes, and philanthropists sought connections. The machinery of social events turned as it always had, indifferent to the small drama unfolding in its corner. But Marcus noticed none of it. He was too busy being present in a moment he had never expected to experience, surrounded by people who cared about something meaningful. Holding a woman who had taught him that opening your heart was not weakness, but strength, watching his son grow up with examples of resilience and redemption. The promises he had made to Rachel echoed in his mind, and for the first time, he felt he was truly honoring them. 1 year after Olivia's return from Serenity Hills, they sat together on the balcony of her penthouse, watching the sunset paint Los Angeles in shades of gold and rose. The apartment had changed since Marcus first saw it personal touches, replacing the sterile perfection of professional decorating. Lucas's artwork hung on the refrigerator. Photos of the three of them crowded the shelves. Books with cracked spines lay scattered on tables, evidence of a life being lived rather than displayed. I've been thinking about something. Olivia's voice carried the weight of careful consideration. That sounds ominous. It's not. At least I don't think it is. She turned to face him. I want to sell the penthouse. Marcus blinked. This penthouse, the one we're sitting in, it never felt like home. Even after I put up pictures and bought comfortable furniture and tried to make it personal. It's still the place where I almost died. Where I spent 5 years pretending to be someone I'm not. She took his hand. I want to live somewhere that belongs to who I am now, not who I was then. Where would you go? I was thinking maybe Santa Monica, near the beach, near a certain 2-bedroom apartment where I've been spending most of my time anyway. Marcus felt something expand in his chest, something that had been waiting for permission to grow. Are you asking to move in with us? I'm asking if that's something you'd want, if it's too fast or too much or too... He kissed her before she could finish cataloging objections. When he pulled back, her eyes were wide. I'll take that as a yes. That's a yes, he grinned. Though we might need a bigger apartment. Lucas is going to want his own bathroom. Already looking into it, Olivia's smile matched his. There's a 3-bedroom 2 blocks from your current place. Ocean view. Good schools nearby. Room for all of us. You've been planning this. I've been hoping for it. Planning requires confidence I didn't quite have. She squeezed his hand. But I have it now. I have everything I need. The move happened a month later, A chaotic weekend of boxes and furniture and Lucas directing traffic with the authority of a tiny general. The new apartment was larger than anywhere Marcus had lived since selling the house after Rachel's death, with windows that faced the Pacific and rooms that felt like possibility rather than excess. They unpacked together, finding places for the combination of their lives. Rachel's photos went on the mantel beside new ones of Olivia and Lucas. Books merged on shelves, mysteries mingling with business texts and children's adventure stories. The kitchen held 3 sets of dishes, none of them matching, all of them somehow right. That night, exhausted from moving, they sat on the balcony, watching the stars emerge over the ocean. Lucas had crashed early, worn out from carrying boxes. He insisted on handling himself. The apartment was quiet in the way new spaces always were, still learning the sounds of the people who would fill it. "Happy?" Olivia asked. "More than I thought possible." Marcus pulled her close. "When Rachel died, I was sure I'd never feel this again. Sure that kind of happiness was something you only got once if you were lucky. And now I think maybe the capacity for joy doesn't get used up. It just shifts, grows, finds new shapes." He kissed her temple. "You taught me that. You and Lucas, and the strange journey that started with a door left open at 3 in the morning." Olivia was quiet for a moment. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you just cleaned the apartment and left? If you'd called 911 instead of staying, if you'd been a different person?" "Sometimes. In the beginning, a lot." He considered the question. "But then I remember what Rachel used to say about parallel lives. She believed that the choices we make create who we are, and who we are creates the choices we make. It's a loop, not a line. You can't separate the person from the decisions. So we were always going to end up here. Or here was always where we were heading once we made the decisions that brought us." He smiled. "Philosophy isn't really my strong suit. Neither is romance, according to you. And yet, here we are. Here we are." The months that followed wove their lives together more completely than any of them had anticipated. Lucas started calling Olivia by her first name rather than Miss Sterling or the lady, a transition that happened so naturally no one thought to mark it. Family dinners became routine with rotating cooking duties that produced results ranging from excellent to questionable. Weekend trips to the beach evolved into a ritual, the 3 of them building sandcastles and collecting shells and watching the ocean do what oceans did. The Second Chances Foundation grew under Olivia's careful guidance, expanding from concept to functioning organization. They funded their first treatment scholarships, helped their first families navigate the maze of recovery resources, began changing lives in small ways that added up to something significant. Marcus found purpose in his role as outreach coordinator, connecting with people who were fighting the same battles Olivia had fought, offering the gift of being seen that had saved her life. And through it all, they were simply family. Imperfect, assembled from tragedy and chance, held together by choice rather than blood. Lucas flourished with the stability and love surrounding him. Olivia learned to laugh at herself, to fail at things, to exist without the constant pressure of achievement. Marcus opened further than he had thought possible, letting love fill spaces he had kept carefully empty. The reconciliation with Gloria Santos happened gradually over months of occasional phone calls and one awkward coffee meeting. She had fired him because she had to. She explained because the company could not afford the liability. But she had never stopped respecting him. "You did the right thing," she told him during that coffee meeting. "I would have done the same if I'd been brave enough." Now she sent clients to the Second Chances Foundation when she encountered workers struggling with addiction, a quiet acknowledgement that some things mattered more than corporate policy. Their friendship, rebuilt from professional wreckage, had become something stronger than before. On the 1-year anniversary of Olivia's return from treatment, they threw a small party in their Santa Monica apartment. Patricia Monroe came, and Dr. Hayes from Serenity Hills, and Gloria Santos, who had forgiven Marcus for his sudden departure and now occasionally sent clients to the foundation. Derek Chen arrived with flowers and stayed to help with cleanup, his redemption arc continuing in small practical steps. Lucas appointed himself official cake distributor, taking the responsibility seriously enough to develop a complex system of slice allocation that no adult could follow. Olivia watched him with an expression that Marcus had learned to recognize as love, mixed with amazement, as though she still could not quite believe this life was hers. After the guests departed and Lucas had been persuaded to bed, Marcus and Olivia sat in their living room surrounded by the debris of celebration. Streamers hung from the ceiling, half-empty glasses clustered on tables. The air smelled of cake and coffee and the particular warmth of a home that had been full of people who cared about each other. 1 year, Olivia said. I can't decide if it feels longer or shorter. Both. Time is strange like that. She leaned against him, fitting into the space beside him, the way she always did now, as naturally as breathing. I keep thinking about what would have happened if things had gone differently. If I died that night. If you hadn't stayed. If any of the 1,000 things that had to go right had gone wrong instead. But they didn't. No, they didn't. She turned to look at him. And now, here we are, in this apartment with that kid building this life. And sometimes I still can't believe it's real. Marcus thought about everything they had survived to reach this moment. The addiction and the recovery. The corporate betrayal and its aftermath. The slow, patient work of learning to trust each other, to build something together, to become a family. It's real, he said, as real as anything gets. Promise, promise. He kissed her soft and sure. Now and as long as you'll have me. Olivia smiled against his lips. That might be a very long time. I'm counting on it. Outside their windows, Los Angeles sprawled in its usual chaos, millions of lives intersecting and diverging in patterns too complex to track. Somewhere out there, someone was struggling. Someone was hiding. Someone was dying by inches while pretending everything was fine. But also, somewhere out there, someone was reaching out. Someone was choosing to help. Someone was deciding that another person's suffering was worth the risk of involvement. Second chances were not given, Marcus had learned. They were created one decision at a time by people willing to show up for each other, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. He held Olivia close as the night deepened around them, grateful for the path that had led them here, ready for whatever path lay ahead. The future was uncertain, as futures always were, but they would face it together, this family assembled from tragedy and hope. And that in the end was enough.